Some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
At the very same time that America refused to give the Negro any land, our government was giving away millions of acres of land in the West and the Midwest, which meant that it was willing to undergird its white peasants from Europe with an economic floor. But not only did they give the land, they built land-grant colleges with government money to teach them how to farm. Not only that, they provided county agents to further their expertise in farming. Not only that, they provided low interest rates in order that they could mechanize their farms. Not only that, today many of these people are receiving millions of dollars in federal subsidies not to farm, and they are the very people telling the black man that he ought to lift himself by his own bootstraps. And this is what we are faced with, and this is the reality. Now, when we come to Washington in this campaign, we are coming to get our check.
I remember when the ATL wasn't banging, now they banging, 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 banging. Niggas throwing sets and them bullets start ringing, bitches banging, 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 banging. I remember when the ATL wasn't banging, now they banging, 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 banging. Niggas throwing sets and them bullets start ringing like bang, 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 bitch, nigga, bang, 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 bang.
Yo, peace, what's going on, what's happening? Hey, I'm back with another live, man. A more personal topic, you know. I want to get down and dirty to the real, right? At the end of the day. Because we all should aspire to be real. Should we not? You know, I want to be as real with y'all as I possibly can. And again, make sure you tune in tomorrow. TFP, shit, I forget the number. I don't know if it's 13 or 14. I forget. I figured it out when I stopped tonight. Where we'll be discussing the recent socialist candidate wins in some of these primary races for Congress. So, this title is a very important title. Ideological bias and its effect on objectivity. Very important topic. Very important topic. Let me start with the preface. All of us have some form of ideological bias. Every single last one of us. I would never deny that. Never deny it. All of us have it. In some way, form, or fashion, whether it's a little or whether it's a lot. Particularly myself, my ideological bias is objectivity itself. I cut shit right down the middle as I see it, right? Sometimes that's to my benefit. Sometimes that can be to my detriment. I don't shy away from that. I don't shy away from it at all. Because it clouds judgment of other biases. You know, I can see that flaw in myself. Sometimes it's good to have a particular bias when it fits. You know, I don't dispute that. But sometimes you can be so objective that judgment is cloud. That's my ideological bias and its effect on objectivity itself. Others have ideological biases that cloud objectivity itself. And that's what we're discussing tonight. Well, not tonight, but this afternoon. Shout out to Vancat, man. That's my TFP cohort. Shout out to him. But I got to call him out. I got to call him out. And we're going to have this very discussion. I got to add it into the episode for this week. I got to do it now. I was going to wait till next week to talk about the various Supreme Court cases because, contrary to popular belief, there were other rulings that came out this week that are equally as important, and I want to discuss all of them. But, in the sake of urgency, we have to discuss this one particular ruling live on TFP because I need to get a foundation set, not only for myself but for Vancat as well. And of course, shout out to Ricardo. Shout out to him. I said something in my live earlier that as the political prophet amongst men came into fruition, not moments afterwards, mere moments. That's one of the curses of being the political prophet amongst men. Just got to be honest. I said in my live earlier when I was giving my final opinions on Justice Clarence Thomas, that sometimes ideological bias clouds objectivity as it pertains to the Constitution, because that's what we was talking about. And I gave a perfect example. Perfect. I said, when it comes to the situation of birthright citizenship, it's letter of the law, and as it is written, originalism. But when it comes to, and just an example, the first thing popped in my head, right? But when it comes to something like 2A, Second Amendment, all that shit is out the window. Why is that? Ideological bias. And it can be vice versa. Don't get it twisted. Because, you got a lot of conservatives and 2A activists that does that very same thing, only in opposite, where they go originalism with 2A, but go spirit of the law, intent, when it comes to something like birthright citizenship, and try to make it exclusive to one group, talking about Black Americans. I don't even believe that, and I'm a Black American. So like Pastor Troy says, vice versa. What if heaven was hell and vice versa? That's because ideological bias. Nothing more, nothing less. And that's where I hit the stop button on the live. Lo and behold, here comes Vancat. I guess he was on break. I don't know. You know what I'm saying? And he come with his flurry of things that he usually does in short bursts on the group chat. And it was something mean, you know what I'm saying? Vancat likes to express himself through mean, which is fine. and the meme was talking about something about, it's funny how the people that's supposed to uphold the Constitution are split on the constitutionality of the Constitution. And it confused me. I'm like, in what way? Like, I was trying to get the rationale behind what he was saying. Because I thought I did a pretty good job explaining what I believed, not only last night, but earlier today. I don't even think this should have been a constitutional question. I've said that multiple times in the span of 24 hours. Multiple times. I disagree with the executive order broadly by Trump. We've had these discussions already. I also agree with Venkat that justices on the Supreme Court express ideological bias. I said that also. Justice Thomas clearly did it. I said he was grasping for straws with his premise of domicile. It didn't make sense. Multiple times. Then he said I was making excuses for what I still don't know because he didn't answer back. I'm making excuses for what? I explained myself pretty well on what I thought in not one but two videos. Then I said, you know what? He didn't watch any of those videos. He couldn't have. He couldn't have. Not if he's saying that. Or he just didn't understand the logic of what I was trying to say. Maybe. I don't know. You know? I don't know. Damn, what the hell is that? Oh, give me a second, y'all. I'm like, what the fuck is that noise? I don't know what the fuck that was. Maybe it was something from outside. So, you know, I was perplexed on you know, on the rationale behind his argument. Then I said, you know what? This is a perfect example of what literally I just said in the live that I just did. Ideological bias. Ideological bias. I don't know how many discussions we've had on TFP, me and Venkat, talking about assault weapons, various other weapons of the sort, saying that people don't need them. Him saying that, not me. Him saying that. Total contradiction of him saying that in the 14th Amendment it say, what it say, originalism. Originalism versus intent. Venkat served as the living exhibition of what I literally just said mere minutes ago in my life. Well, if we're talking about the Constitution as a whole, is it literal or is it intended? Which one? I say it's both. I have the innate ability to characterize each individual amendment both ways. Letter of the law, spirit of the law. Some people go back and forth depending on their ideological stance. The Supreme Court in and of itself are not robots. They also have ideological bias. No doubt about it. And that don't just go for the conservative justices, that go for the liberals as well. Well, how do you know that, MD? Well, literally the same thing Venkat did, Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson did when it came to assault weapons. Literally the same thing. That constitutes, no pun intended, ideological bias. And then as I was skimming through the ruling, overall, looking at all the justices' opinions, I came up on Ketanji Brown Jackson's concurrence, and she actually called out Clarence Thomas in her concurrence by ridiculing him, saying that Justice Thomas has this stance of a colorblind constitution, yet he's using the citizenship clause in the 14th Amendment as a race-conscious document. He didn't do that. But she accused him of it, which quantitatively meaning he's using letter of the law in one instance and spirit of the law in the other. Well, you did the exact same thing with assault weapons, literally. My whole argument, I'll continue to hammer it in everybody's head until they understand it. This case broadly shouldn't even been put before the Supreme Court. It shouldn't. Not in this capacity, not in a constitutional capacity. But again, because Trump is a dumbass. And he's trying to do a quick fix for the populace of MAGA maniacs. He signed that executive order day one. It was a losing battle the moment he signed the dotted line. I could have told you that. So this ain't me advocating for Justice Thomas or trying to advocate for illegals and TPS immigrants to like leave. I'm not doing that. I'm being what they call objective. It's as objective as I can be in my own capacity. It's as simple as that. It's as simple as that. I criticized John Sauer and Clarence Thomas in his opinion. I criticized them both. I thought it was a poor presentation by John Sauer, and I think Clarence Thomas's foundation of his opinion was lackluster. I wasn't given what I thought should happen one way or another. I wasn't doing that. Just wasn't. Go back and read Brett Kavanaugh's opinion. Brett Kavanaugh's opinion is a stark difference of Clarence Thomas' opinion. Brett Kavanaugh pretty much said the same thing I'm saying. Like, look, man, this shouldn't even be a constitutional question. The law says what it says. This is a legal issue. And I didn't even know that prior to this morning. I didn't read Kavanaugh's opinion until this morning. Kavanaugh clearly said the legalities of TPS and illegal citizens having children is not a constitutional concern. It's a legal one. The only people that can acquiesce is Congress. And I agree. Now you got, liberal media and some left-wing pundits saying, oh, Kavanaugh gave Trump a second option. Well, I mean, that's what the Supreme Court is supposed to do. He's telling you that it's unconstitutional. He tell you that from the jump. But is it legal? Constitutionality, legality, two different things. These are the very same arguments that were being had in 1866 of the people that actually wrote the fucking amendment. The same exact argument. Why are we not using that as a focal point? What was the intent of the 14th Amendment, the Citizenship Clause? What was the intent? Spirit of the law. What does the law say? Letter of the law. The intent ebbs and flows with the change in time. Consequently, ideological biases ebbs and flows with the changing of the time. Clarence Thomas's argument was that to be subject to the jurisdiction thereof, you must be born here and have domicile here. Well, that might have been true in 1866. That's not true in 2026. It's just not. Spirit of the law, flow, ebbs and flows. Well, what does the letter of the law state? Well, the letter of the law clearly says anybody. Emphasis on anybody. It don't say anybody, it say any person. But I'm saying anybody that is born or naturalized and subject to the jurisdiction thereof is a United States citizen. Point blank, period. Letter of the law. Well, then you ask, who is subject to the jurisdiction thereof? Anybody is subject to the jurisdiction thereof. I live in Georgia. When I go to Florida every fucking day, I'm subject to the laws, the state statute, the state code of the state of Florida. Period. I don't own a home in Florida. I don't have domicile in Florida. I'm still subject to their jurisdiction. Why? Because I'm there. That was a bad argument from Clarence Thomas. It was a bad argument from John Sauer. Instead of using that to quantify citizenship, use it to quantify legality. If an illegal immigrant comes to the United States, therefore they are subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. Meaning they came here without documentation, which is illegal under the jurisdiction of the United States. How come I can come up with that shit and the Solicitor General can't? How? Now it becomes a question of what do we do with these little anchor babies? What do we do with them? Now you start getting into ethics and morality and all that shit that y'all like to tout. Maybe Solicitor General Sauer wasn't ready to have that type of discussion. He should have been. This was never about constitutionality. Never. But because we have ideological bias, Trump got ideological bias, John Sauer got ideological bias, Clarence Thomas got ideological bias, Ketanji Brown Jackson got ideological bias, Brett Kavanaugh got ideological bias. Everybody in the world has some form of ideological bias. Unless you just don't have a brain or a conscience. The tightrope we walk is our own personal principle versus the law. That's why I love America so. Because it forces you to walk that tightrope. It forces you. Ain't nobody doing shit out the kindness of their heart. Nor should you be forced to. I mean, I hate to say it, that's just the reality that we live in. That's just the reality that we live in. So tomorrow night, I'm gonna ask Venkat, hey, what's your rationale on the Constitution in and of itself? Where do we draw the line when it comes to letter versus spirit? Because you can't have it both ways unless you're a political prophet. I can have it both ways because I understand what the law says and I understand what the intent of the law was. And I understand the ebbs and flow. What Trump called it, the weed. I understand the ebbs and flow. Are we talking originalism or are we talking about living, breathing document? In the question of 2A, establishing a well-regulated militia, the people have the right to keep and bear arms. What does that mean? Well, the letter of the law is clear. I have the right to keep and bear arms, period. And 2A is part of the Bill of Rights, what was specific in both the letter and the spirit. Both. It describes the spirit in the first half, the letter in the second half. The spirit was, you know, when shit go down, we have people that's trained and well regulated in terms of practices, mores, bylaws, so on and so forth. And they have their own weapon. So when they called upon, we can make it do what it do. I can join a militia at any point in time. It didn't say that I had to be part of a militia. It never said that. Ideological bias. Never said that. Back in the colonial days, you had like the Minutemen and all these people. When they showed up and showed out, they weren't outfitted with standard military equipment. They had their own shit and was ready to defend the homeland. So the founder said, hey, look, man, we got people, just regular old folks, farmers, quartermasters, whoever. When called upon, they ready to get busy. So therefore, we must establish their right to keep and bear arms. So when the time comes, ain't no ifs, ands, buts about it. They're ready to do it. With their own muskets, their own blunderbusses, whatever the fuck they got. That same principle applies today. That same principle applies today. John Adams and Hancock and all of these people in Jefferson, they didn't know how advanced technology was going to get. How would they know? Spirit of the law. What's the intent? The intent is for everybody to have the ability to keep and bear arms. For when the time comes. That's the intent. They didn't say you know, we gonna keep everything stashed away, but when it go down, we gonna supply everybody with guns. Don't say that. Don't say it. Letter of the law. Don't say that. Citizenship clause, spirit of the law. We gotta figure out a way for all these free Black Americans to establish their citizenship, intent, spirit of the law. Well, in the prior amendment, we said no one can discriminate. Well, not in the amendment, but in the Civil Rights Act, you can't discriminate on such and such, such and such and such and such. So we can't actually use a group of people. So this applies for everyone. Letter of the law. You see where I'm going? You can't use intent on one amendment and use letter on another. Can't do it. Can't do it. Ketanji Brown Jackson accused Clarence Thomas of doing that. I don't agree with the wording, but I understand what she was saying. But I also understand you do the same shit. And so does every other justice. Ideological bias and its effect on objectivity. We don't have the mental stability, and it ain't our fault. It's just we humans. We don't have the mental stability to be 100% in compliance with wording versus what we feel in our heart, what we feel in our mind. We don't have it. You know, for the religious folks, it's because we have a soul. We have a conscience. Now that conscience has been cultivated through upbringing, religious characters, so on and so forth. Our society shapes who we are as people. Now, your fight through the time that you're born to the time you die is the total line between reality and personal moral principles. That's it. My personal morals is not another person's personal moral. So results may differ. That's just what it is. But we always should seek what the framers called a more perfect union. How do you obtain that more perfect union? Through law. And it's as simple as that. It's as simple as that. I love the United States. Happy 250. But the society of the United States is in a fucked up situation. I mean, it's bad. It's real bad. And I told you, as Black Americans, we about to catch hell from both sides. We about to catch hell from both sides. On one side, the far right, they trying to erase us. On the other side, the far left, they want to ignore us. So if there's any time that I just need to throw my objectivity to the side, it might be now. If there's any point in time where I need to embrace collectivism, it might be with FBA and ADOS and the like. I'm gonna just be honest. You know, it's hard for me to say things like that, but it's true. It's true. I just got to keep that shit real. It's fight or flight at this point. It's fight or flight. And here in the coming weeks, I think I'm gonna start doing more MD's Thought Box Lives, man, because we in a time of learning. I need to start teaching more, bro. I need to start teaching more. Because I don't think people like understand like what socialism is. I don't think people understand. There has never been in the history of the world a successful socialist program ever. I mean, do y'all understand that? Do y'all understand that? People like to use the Scandinavian countries as an example. They're not really socialist. Yes, they have socialist programs, but so does the fucking United States. The difference between the Norwegian and Scandinavian, like Norway and Sweden and all these places, the difference between them and us is one determining factor. Y'all want to know it? And the Magamaniac's gonna love this one. What's the determining factor between those countries and the United States? What do they don't have that we got? Does anybody know? Does anybody know? I give you a hint. The rest of Europe got it. Western and Southern Europe got it, but Northern Europe don't. I'll give you the answer. It's immigration. It's immigration. On top of their numbers pale in comparison to other European countries and America. Pale in comparison. So you use their countries as an example in bad faith. That's what I'm telling you. Bad faith. On top of, they still use capitalism as a foundation. I mean, you know, everybody does. Even the communist countries use some form of capitalism because you can't escape it. But again, like I said, we'll discuss all that tomorrow. I just wanted to come up here and, you know, just give a lesson on ideological bias, man. And why in some cases it can be very dangerous. It can be very dangerous. You know, mainly because simply it's unfair. It's unfair and it's un-American to impose your viewpoints on me or anybody else. It's unfair. That's why the Constitution is so important. But even within the interpretation of the Constitution, you're going to have ideological bias. It's going to happen. It's been happening for a very long time. That don't mean we just tear it up and throw it away. It's not what that means. You know, and replace it with what? Your morals, your principles. That's also unfair because your principles may not be mine. There is no universal standard of morality. That's impossible. It's impossible. I used to think the universal standard of morality in the school of objectivity was logic and reason, but even that's unfair because some people are just stupid. Some people don't have the ability to think with reason and logic. So that's also unfair. I used to think that. Ayn Rand taught me that. But now in my maturity, even I think it's impossible. It's impossible. So there you have it, man. There you have it. So that's where I'm at with it. Fat Cat, I'll see you tomorrow. We're going to lead off the show talking about this pivotal Supreme Court case. And I'm going to test your level of objectivity. That's what I'm going to do. So, you know, I just wanted to give you a heads up. Just wanted to give you a heads up. So with that, hey, I ain't got nothing else to say, y'all. Anything else pop up, I'll be back again. I ain't doing shit else. Peace.
Yeah.